Hello and welcome to a review of Enotria The Last Song. So we're going to hop in. I have beaten most of the game. There's probably a few sections I've missed. And we're going to start looking at this by hopping over to the hub area and having a look at how progression works. I think that's one of the big criticisms I'm going to have of this is how some of its systems are used or not used, as the case may be. So, this is a hub area you'll unlock a few hours into the game after you clear the first area. And I'm just going to run over to here and show you the three sort of main methods of character progression. Over to the anvil, and we have a fairly standard Souls-like progression system. So Memoria is my souls, and the Ephesite fragments and unraveled Ephesite are in Titanite if you've played Dark Souls before. Weapons go up to plus 10, and these are just a linear sequence of upgrades. Masks, which are essentially my class, for want of a better description, and these go up to plus 3. Just gradually increases. The ones you're using, you're going to want to max out. This is one of the masks I use most, as you can see, maxed out. And lines. These are essentially spells. And again, these go up to 3, so find one I use, and I imagine I've maxed it out. There we go. Maxed out at level 3. And these are just straight linear upgrades. Now, we will run back to, I think they're called Tangled Fates, essentially bonfires. And have a look at the other two main methods of progression before we jump into any sort of gameplay. So, we have a very standard Souls-esque leveling system. 4 points in, stuff goes up. You'll notice here my build's quite balanced, and we'll get into why in a little bit. That's to do with how this game runs its systems. But Bruiser is health and defense, fairly straightforward. Assassin is just flat damage. Elementalist is elemental damage. Trickster, that largely dictates my stamina. Worth putting this up because your stamina is quite low at the start of the game. And Battle Mage is magic. Line charge is how quick my spells charge, essentially. And the final progression we have is this, Path of Innovators. So these are passive buffs that you equip. So just because I've unlocked it doesn't mean it's going to work all the time. So this one, casting a ranged line, briefly increases my Andore, that's magic power. And the mask line charges up slightly. So that only works if I equip it in the bit we're going to go look at next. And these range from a fairly passive skill like that, that's just going to improve my magic, right the way up to something like this, which essentially means every time I do a heavy attack, enemies take essentially bleed damage. And these, which are completely critical for elemental builds, essentially using certain mask lines automatically gives your weapon the associated element. All to do is which slot they're in. Okay. So, one of this game's big strengths is the loadouts page. Let's re-equip my usual mask. I think I must have had that one on for grinding. So, I'm just going to go over what everything is. So we have 2 weapons and a parry gem. This is following similar lines to Lies of P, where my primary defensive option is to parry. There are no shields, there is no guard in this game. But the parry is quite generous. And there's a few different gems that have various effects. I haven't noticed a vast difference between them. I think the blue ones defend better against magic. This, I think, can only perfect parry, but can block anything. So there's a few minor differences. I don't know why you'd ever use this, because it doesn't block everything, but interesting. I don't feel like they fleshed the parry gem system out enough. They don't feel different enough. 4 spells. I will show these in combat, but you have to use your weapons to charge these up. And you'll spot presto, allegro, that is how fast these charge. I think they're all music terms. This game is a little pretentious in some of its naming, very much fits with the Italian theme. But yeah, you will kind of have to make notes. Then we have a mask. Now these have an effect. So Andorre Burst is like a stun type thing that's also used for puzzle solving. And that makes this stronger. And then when I'm awakened, which happens after I've done so much damage, I think is what triggers that. Again, mechanics are a little bit vague, sometimes very Dark Souls. It is a Souls-like at the end of the day. I get super armor, which is really useful. This setup I use primarily for exploration. Then we get these. Now these are why my build isn't particularly specialised. As you'll notice, most of these give me a negative and a positive stat change. So I can use these to sort of switch my build up quite drastically. At the end of the game you unlock this one, which gives me plus 20 to everything, but means I take double damage. I haven't found the double damage to be as crippling as I feel it should be. I'm not sure if it's not working properly or if the game's just not mean enough. And then, as I mentioned, this is where I equip my Path of Innovator's passive upgrades. And you can see I can have 6. So I have this on most of my builds, which basically means if someone hits me, they take damage too. The heavy attack one's causing bleed. And killing an enemy restores health, which, you know, is amazingly useful. And then here we just have items. So this is my return if I get myself stuck. Highly recommend keeping hold of these. There are a few kind of trick areas where you will just get stuck with no way back. I don't know why that's equipped, I never use it. And these are essentially life gems, although they're steal health on hit. So a little bit different, but they do kind of give me sort of infinite healing. Now, on to the big bit this game does. You will notice down the bottom here, I have 3 different builds. And these I can switch with on the fly, and I can change every part of them. So I can have 3 wildly different setups that I can flick through as I feel I need to. This is one of this game's more unique elements. So the idea is you're always going to have 3 builds. In the early game it feels a bit unnecessary, but as you'll notice, I haven't done that much grinding, and I've got level 10 everything, plus 3 on all my masks. I don't think all my mask lines are plus 3, but I don't use them that much. I didn't wind up using magic, I found it a little bit awkward. Okay, and that explains the game's systems. Over here we have my various sorts of damage. So physical damage is how hard I hit stuff. Andorre damage is magic. Unraveling damage is like stance damage. There's a sort of critical parry type system. And then Viz, Funto, Gracia, and Milano are all my elements, and they inflict Dizzy, Wicked, Radiant, and Sick, respectively. Again, everything has like a pretentious naming, but you do get used to it after a little while. It can just be a little confusing because they do sort of info dump everything on you in a tutorial at the start, and then go, have at. So you flounder a little bit. I feel like they could possibly have spread that tutorial out over the first area a bit more. Speaking of the first area, let's have a look at this game's biggest strength, and that is its level design and art direction. So, going to travel into the first zone, and anyone that played the demo or saw any content on this game is going to recognise this area instantly. So we'll get my polearm out, and we shall just have a run round. And as you can see, this game is stunning. Not necessarily graphically, it's by no means bad looking. We're on PS5, so not got the highest end PC running it, but equally it's looking fairly good. But the art direction is amazing. I'm going to take you on a wander around this rather pretty looking Italian city, and we'll find some combat eventually. You can see this area, there's quite a lot of guys just kind of standing around not doing a lot. If I attack them, they will become hostile. I think I'm going to one-shot all of these because I'm massively over-leveled for this area. And you gather items. Some enemies will drop weapons. And I'm just going to take you on a little run to show you the first area. And I'm going to go through all 3 areas because I think you need to see just how good the art direction is. And we pop out here, and you'll notice a complete change of biome. This is quite nicely done through the church. This is sort of a second area where you're going to fight one of the major bosses for this zone. There are 2 major bosses in this zone. I probably want my big holy hammer for this. Now you'll notice everything's going down quite easily. Now I am over leveled, this is the first area and I've beaten the game, but you're not going to notice that change much. As far as Souls-likes go, this is one of the easiest I think I've ever played. Across here, and we will do the other level transition. So there's a few bosses that took me a few tries. One quite fun optional boss. And this loops me all the way back around to the pretty city again. And this sort of shows you the direction for the first area. We're going to take a wander now to the second area, which I think is probably the best looking, and talk a bit more about the combat. Because that's kind of where this game flounders a bit. Not awful, but it's not going to be winning Game of the Year for its combat. If I go that way. And show you a mask line quickly. So L2 and massive hammer, or L2 and crossbow, or L2 and big poison stick. So they all sort of let me summon a kind of arcane weapon. Okay, off to zone 2. I think we will head to the Colosseum. So this is sort of just over halfway through zone 2, I think. Yeah, just over halfway through zone 2. Where there are some enemies I can actually deal with, actually take a few hits. So, as you can see, Zone 2 is beautiful. I absolutely loved exploring this area, and the art design and level design here is amazing. There's lots of hidden stuff. Exactly what you want. So, the weapon I'm using currently is holy damage. See? Now, I can parry the big rock, and that blue bar is like a stance. Now that didn't do that much damage. If I swap my build, use the game's main mechanic, and whip this out, this pretty much one-shots it. That's because he's weak to the element on this weapon. If I switch to, I think this is the one that they're really strong against. This build and go to fight, he's going to throw a rock at me again. 1, 2, 3, can I parry it? Yes. You'll notice, even with my massively over leveled, I'm not doing that much damage. Now my visceral will probably kill him, because they haven't got a lot. So you're really going to have to exploit the element, because it wildly impacts how much damage you can do. So this weapon he's really resistant to. Notice, the swing I make really isn't doing that much, and I'm going to be relying on the stance break. but switch back to a weapon I know works against him. And I'm getting thousands of damage a hit. So you sort of have to exploit the elements to a point. It doesn't really work if you don't use them at all. I found the game ends up really punishing if you're not doing that, so it's clearly designed around it. Now these are cannons. There's no way to turn them off, they just shoot at you infinitely. And here comes the infantry and the kamikaze dogs. You see, the double damage should be having you die if you make mistakes like that, but it isn't. Deal with these guys. You out. No, you're So I've got my Estus healing. These are really generous right from the start. As I say, this is one of the easiest Souls-like I think I've ever dealt with. So magic is quite powerful to use it. I'm really not specced into it and it still hits like a bus. And we'll head over into the Lost City. Now, control options, I have fight back, heavy attack, and these true combo into each other, which is quite nice. So there are some combinations. If I remember right, heavy breaks to the right. Yeah, it's quite good. I get my big heavy attack off in an opening, and I get a really quick follow up. Dodge roll, standard. Got your iframes with that. It's quite useful. Your parry. You'll notice that it sort of lingers afterwards. If I hit parry too early, I end up with a block, which has saved me more times than I care to count, as someone that isn't the best at parrying. But this game did make it possible. The parry window is really quite generous, and then you have that extra block window as well. My magic, you've seen me be using. These charge up the more I hit. I only ever use the quick charge stuff. The slowest charging stuff I just never found remotely useful. And otherwise, that's about it for controls, other than my weapon switch and my mask switch. I don't know why I take huge amounts of damage every time I mask switch. I'm wondering if that's something to do with my mask that buffs everything. We're gonna whip around here and just go one checkpoint deep into the city, and then we will move on and have a look at the third and final area. So, as I say, combat was fun, but it was really easy. I like Souls-likes, but I'm by no means good at them. I normally get stomped into the dirt pretty regularly. And this I just breezed through. No boss took me more than 4 or 5 attempts, except for one optional one. So these guys are annoying. They have black powder, and they like to shoot me a lot. Here we go. So you'll notice in my builds there's an awful lot of sort of greatsword and ultra greatsword type weapons. And yeah, you're not using anything light and fast in this. There are sabers, but I found them generally lacking. I was in cover. Dodge, dodge, dodge. Ow. There we go. And kill it. Now that cannon will still fire at me even though he's dead, which is just unreasonable if you ask me. So yeah, like I say, I would expect, especially as I'm taking double damage, remember, I just got absolutely bodied by those two. And, you know, I took barely anything. Now I'm recovering it back because I've got heal on kill, which is incredibly useful. Oh, this leads me back to the checkpoint, and then we'll go to the next area. So yeah, the combat, it's not unfun, but I don't know, I wanted more. Given how complex the systems in this game are, you know, having the 3 loadouts all the time, using the 4, which really means you should be using all 4 elements across your build. I was expecting to be forced to, and particularly expecting bosses to force me to change in the middle, and they just never did. So on to the last area, which I liked the least, but that's possibly me. Let's go via the clock tower. That's probably the best view of this. And yeah, the bosses in this have ranged from like a reskin of an enemy that just has a ridiculous amount of health to actually quite inventive and creative bosses. Here. Get rid of you. I think you guys are all weak to bless. Knowing the enemy weaknesses helps endlessly. I will kill that dog eventually. There we go. So this area has a sort of, I don't know, Venice, Mediterranean kind of evening theme to it. And has like libraries and places of learning around. Not bad to explore by any means. I found it to be the least interesting, but the 3 zones are all really, really interesting. Oddly, you can tackle zone 2 and 3 in whatever order you like. So it is entirely possible to do zone 3 before zone 2. I don't know why you would. There's a boss guarding the entrance to each, and the zone 3 boss is insane compared to the zone 2 boss. So your playstyle is however you'd use, even if you're going magic style, you're probably going to be using a big sword. So you're probably going to be doing the sort of glass cannon bonk approach, but you're not much of a glass cannon. So this is what the boss for this area is. He's a big one of these, and they're really awkward to deal with. Their attack patterns are just really erratic. That noise is I think they're highballs that will sing at you and have some actually quite dangerous magic. These can kill you, they won't normally. There we go. But yeah, I was hoping for sort of more necessity to switch. I've just not been finding it. I think some of it's the combat's too easy. Parry being as generous as it is, you just feel a little too powerful. What are you? So here's an opportunity for me actually to switch because you're with this weapon. I am too over leveled. You were quite a tough enemy when I first met you. But yeah, and on to what I think is probably going to be the deal breaker for most people with this game, which is its length. So it's a Souls-like RPG. Now it's an indie Souls-like, so I wasn't expecting sort of 200 hours of content. But this game can probably be beaten in 15, 20 hours, even by someone like me. PlayStation reckons I've got about 40 in it, and I haven't played anything like that, and I've been AFK for a lot of it, and possibly even... Yeah, and I've done some grinding, I've done some post-game exploring to kind of mop a few bits up. So yeah, and given it's a full price release, or just shy of a full price, I think, £40 in the UK, it's hard to recommend at that much. Bugs and glitches wise, there are a few, not gonna lie. I had a few kind of incidents where I had to quit to the menu. I will say the autosave system is really good. I never lost more than a few seconds of progress. But, you know, still immersion breaking, still annoying. Yeah, around the second area, I was thinking this was sort of like Game of the Year material because I was really getting into it. And there's a optional boss in the second area that I would say is one of the best in the game. Very learnable, very beatable, but can kill you very easily. And then I got to the end and it's like, is that it? So yeah, an interesting game. Very unique art style. Your money's worth from it is gonna come from if you like exploration and hunting down secrets. Not from the combat, because it's functional for the most part, but it's really easy for the genre. So yeah, this is Enotria, the last song. As far as numbers go, it's 7-ish. I think they could do with just fleshing some more areas out. When I unlocked the fourth area, I thought, oh, there's going to be a whole zone. There isn't. It's why I haven't shown it. It's just a route to a boss. Don't get me wrong, it's visually stunning, like the rest of the game. But yeah, it was just essentially a big staircase and boss. The end boss the hidden boss at the end of the game does change things up a little bit. You essentially have to fight him without your mask, so you can't use any of your magic, which seems like a fun gimmick, but kind of screws you over if you were going for a sort of magic focused build. I could see you having to respec, which thankfully is quite easy. There's an item to do it, and if you beat an optional boss, there's a character that appears in this area that will just let you respec infinitely. But yeah, I can't help but feel this could have been a lot more. It sort of feels like it was rushed towards the end. Maybe with updates and DLC eventually it'll lift itself up. It definitely has the potential to, and I'd be really keen to see what a sequel does. But I think this one's, for most people, probably a wait for sale. Get it when it's a bit cheaper. And had a few more of the bugs patched, because it's done a few weird ones, usually the camera doing something funky and not returning to where it should. Thankfully never during action sequences, usually when I've gone to speak to the merchant or something. But yeah, anyway, this has been Enotria, the last song. I'll see you next time.